Welcome to Media Melanie Talks TV. I'm Melanie, and today I'm back to talk about School Spirits Season 2 on Paramount+. I'm here coming in hot with another theory video. Before we dive in, please be sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. Stick with me for the entire Season 2 coverage of School Spirits, and if you enjoy other dark TV shows, hey, you might enjoy some of my other videos as well. This theory that I'm going to cover here is one that's been around the fandom, it's been around the Reddit boards, basically since Season 1, and I do think it could still possibly have legs here in Season 2, just especially given how twisty this show is, how Season 1 ended on these big twist cliffhanger reveals. So I'm not ruling anything out. That said, this is going to cover whether or not Maddie Nears' body is actually dead, or if Janet is using it as a skin suit to get around, or if Maddie could possibly be in a coma. And I would like to preface this by saying I don't want either of those things to happen. I am the least person who ever wants it to all be a dream or they were dead the entire time. These theories are thrown around a lot on mystery shows. From is a good example. I know a lot of people were thinking, oh, it's all a dream, or they are all in these comas or whatever. And then for anybody who's watched Ryan Murphy's Grotesquerie, that's another show where I think the entire thing is based on somebody who's in a coma, who is imagining the people she's interacting with based on people in her real life, and also the doctors and nurses that are caring for her. Now, we still don't actually know what's going on in Grotesquerie, not sure if it's getting a second season. I did think it was worthwhile to come on here for School Spirits and give some evidence for both sides of this theory. Could the coma theory be true? Could the death theory be true? Maybe, or maybe not. But you know what? It's kind of fun to theorize. And remember, no matter what your theory is, drop it in the comments. Keep things nice and friendly. We are all here to have some fun with a TV show we love. So there's nothing better than good conversation amongst fans, because you know what? I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to be haters and don't want either of these things. And again, to be clear, neither do I, but it's a possibility, so we're going to talk about it. Let's look at the possibility of Maddie's body actually being dead. A few things we know regarding Season 1 and when she went down into that boiler room. Maddie's soul was vulnerable. She may as well have had the vacancy sign above her head. Now that we know about the serotonin and dopamine and probably a certain threshold of one of those chemicals or a ratio of those chemicals, that seems like what it takes for these spirits to be able to possess a body. So Maddie was in the right emotional state. But if you pair that with a severe injury, she hit that pipe pretty hard. It did cause bleeding right away. And the impact of that could have been enough to actually kill her. However, there's a wild card with all of this because Janet's spirit or soul enters Maddie's body and uses it to get around. Now, if Maddie's body is actually dead, this would raise quite a few implications for the resolution of Maddie's arc eventually once the series ends, if they do go this route and give us this type of reveal. And some evidence that this head wound she received could actually be a big problem, and she is actually just a skin suit now. When Maddie as Janet got into the bath once she returned home, a pretty decent amount of blood kind of floated out there. Now that could be because this was her first bathing experience. It's been about a month since all of these events have occurred, and if it is the first time she has showered or bathed, I can definitely see a pretty decent amount of blood coming off. Okay, fine. But it was also very bright red, which to me indicates fresh blood. Along with that, there's the towel. She was holding it on her head, and that too looked like fresh red blood. Not brown, dried blood, but very fresh blood. And the fact she's hiding the towel, yeah, she's probably hiding the head wounds because, let's face it, the last thing Ghost Janet wants to do is talk to a mental health professional, as she said, but a medical professional, that might be even worse, because if the body is not actually alive, a doctor will pick up on that pretty quickly. But the fact that she's hiding the towel makes me think, oh, okay, there's a possibility of this. Also the fact that Mr. Anderson and Maddie are able to be seen by the ghosts. The fact that their spirits can be seen by other ghosts is very telling. Otherwise, would the other ghosts be able to see Maddie's spirit if the body wasn't dead? The fact that ghosts can see them, to me, means something. let's say Maddie's body is dead and the group of friends is able to get Janet/Maddie's body back at Split River High School. What would happen if they do a successful soul swap once again? Would that put everything right in the world? Janet goes back to her body. She's able to maybe cross over or go in her scar and get the closure that she needs. When Maddie's spirit goes back into Maddie's body, will things just go back to normal and she returns to the world of the living? Will she be able to see ghosts again? Or if the body is actually not living and it's just being fueled by the presence of a soul in it, could Maddie's body just kind of like wither and die away immediately, and then she's still stuck there in Split River High School, which would be so incredibly tragic? But I don't think this show is here to give us a happy ending, so in a way it would be fitting, especially with what the cast has been saying about think the worst thing you can imagine, and then worse than that. I think this is probably one of the worst case scenarios. And another thing that could potentially prove that the body is actually dead, the fact that we saw Janet sitting inside that house after she lit the fire. How did she survive a fire? She didn't walk away with a mark on her body. If she hadn't showered, even if she got out of that fire, there would have been some evidence of ash or soot or something. So if the body's dead, is that perhaps why she was able to survive the fire? All right, so I've presented a few facts as to potentially why Maddie's body could be dead. Let's dive into some evidence that this theory is actually insane and not true at all. I mentioned the color of the blood. Red blood indicates fresh blood, but that also indicates that the heart is still pumping. So if the wound is still bleeding, that does mean the heart would still be pumping. But are the rules a little bit different with injuries and death and all of this because of the nature of what's happening with the soul swapping? I don't know that we could rule it out. And then the other part of it too is if the head wound is substantial and it's still bleeding, wouldn't somebody notice it? She's got blonde hair. I think it would be difficult to hide. I mean, perhaps maybe she's styling it over the wound. And Janet's very smart. She's a scientist. Perhaps she was able to clean it up and treat it in a way where nobody's going to notice. But for me, I think somebody would notice the head wounds, right? Another thing, too, is the fact that Simon is the only one that can see and communicate with Maddie and not communicate with the other ghosts. Because of this exception, it does lead me to believe that Maddie's spirit is different than the other ghosts, and that's why Simon can only see her. Yes, it is highly possible the only reason is because of their close friendship. They are soulmate friends, as they've talked about, and I mean, Simon's gone back and forth about whether she or not she's a figment of his imagination, but the fact that Simon can see her maybe does lend itself to the fact that the veil is just a little thinner between the world of the living and the afterlife because Maddie's not actually dead. I just keep thinking that Simon would be able to see the other ghosts if he can see Maddie, but again, it's probably due to their close friend relationship. I guess the real test is going to be when Simon comes back to the school. Will he be able to see Mr. Anderson or not? If Simon can see Mr. Anderson, that makes me think, okay, yes, there's still a chance. Mr. Anderson's body, Maddie's body, they're still living. There's still potential for things to be made right. If Simon can't see Mr. Anderson, that's interesting to me because they had a relationship where Simon doesn't know these other ghosts personally. So I am curious. And yeah, okay, maybe Simon and Mr. Anderson aren't close, but I am curious to know if they were close enough where Simon will be able to see him as well. And I do think that will be kind of a test. All right, so this next theory is pretty wild. I found it on Reddit from Clean Dirty Dishes. I will drop the link to this thread down in the comments. It's about the most insane theories you can think of. I'm gonna go ahead, put it up on the screen here, and read it. It's a hallucination from her head injury, and she's in ICU or long-term care facility for traumatic brain injury patients. The ghosts are actually her nurses, interns, and doctors who she has incorporated into her dream. The living people are the ones who've come to visit her at the hospital or the facility. The series ends with her remaining in the comatose state. Maddie, in Maddie's mind, never gets her body back and adventures on with the ghosts at Split River High School. Or her mom decides to turn off the machine, keeping her alive, and then Maddie and the other ghosts cross over. Whew. Could this be a coma dream? I sincerely hope not, but the way this show gives twists and turns, it may not surprise me. We did get some hospital coma type of content when Xavier was in the hospital, and we know that he was seeing ghosts as well. Was that setting the table for the fact that maybe Maddie is in a coma and this is all just one big dream? Again, if you have watched Ryan Murphy's Grotesquerie, this sounds very much like what happened in season 1. And again, still not really sure what happened. That show was a complete mind F and left me wondering, like, what did I just watch? So yeah, I mean, it's possible she could be in a coma. That would make sense that she's having the presence of her friends and loved ones there. So they're participating in this coma dream she's having. And then the nurses and doctors, I mean, maybe that's where we're getting Mr. Martin from. Maybe Janet's character is a nurse. Maybe, Wally is a patient in the bed next door. I don't know. I think it's pretty insane. But again, we have to talk about it because nothing is ruled out until they prove us otherwise. And hey, if Maddie is in a coma, maybe we'll end up getting something where she has an out-of-body experience similar to Xavier and is able to encounter some of these spirits in the hospital, which would play into the fact that Maddie's dad is in fact a ghost in a waiting room hospital. Is it coincidental that we learned that information? Could there be a hospital at play where Maddie gets to encounter her dad there? What is Xavier going to do with the information that he saw Maddie's dad in the picture, and he also saw him when he had his out-of-body experience? I do think there could be something to unpack there, given the fact that we've seen a character in a coma, we've seen Maddie's dad as a ghost in the waiting room. I don't know. I mean, maybe it is possible. Tying into the whole coma situation, there are people who've said maybe Janet was in a coma before she died. The evidence for that is the date of the fire from the newspaper is different than her death date on her grave marker. Could Janet have actually survived the fire and then been in the hospital in a coma herself? And this is somehow some cyclical version of history repeating itself with Maddie? That too would be pretty insane. I mean, what if Maddie is having to relive Janet's trauma in some way to be a superhero who's able to break this cycle of generational trauma and free all of the ghosts somehow in the process? So I've presented some facts, evidence, and opinions on whether or not both of these theories could be true. Is Janet solely using Maddie's body as a skin suit? The body is dead, but it's her soul that's driving this vessel? Or is Maddie in a coma repeating history, and that's what happened with Janet as well? Please go ahead and drop your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Keep it friendly because I know this is a little unhinged and there's going to be people who are like, no, this will never happen. It better not happen. Again, that is team me. I do not want these things to happen, but we cannot rule it out. This show is crazy. After what they gave us at the end of season 1, I have expectations for basically anything. So I want to know what you think. Definitely let me know. Be sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button. I am covering other dark TV shows as well, including Severance on Apple TV+, wrapping up Dexter Original Sin tomorrow, Paradise on Hulu. I may or may not continue with The Hunting Party on NBC, and then I will definitely be covering The White Lotus on HBO Max. Plus, I will be back with The School Spirit Season 2, Episode 6 preview. Probably drop that on Monday, so make sure you catch that as well, along with my reaction and review to Episode 5. Really appreciate all of you School Spirits fans being here. It has been so much fun covering Season 2. I love talking about this show, and I really can't wait to see how this season is going to end. 3 episodes left, everybody. What do you think they're going to give us? Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back again soon. Media Melanie, clicking off.